Okay, so the learning outcome number 8 is discuss how social or cultural factors affect one cognitive process. Now, what we're going to be doing with this document is we're talking about a social factor, which is video games, and the cognitive process, which is visual attention. Okay? And so this is all based off an article, a journal article by Hubert-Wallander, Green, and Bavelier. Now, I wouldn't be opposed to you guys just citing Green and Bavelier on this because they're a little bit easier to remember. But basically what we're going to be talking about is how some video games, specifically Halo, Call of Duty, Unreal Tournament, basically games that demand really intense spatial attention and divided attention, where you're dividing your attention among a lot of different stimuli. These games that involve aiming and shooting at the center of the screen while also tracking and paying attention to enemies, and periphery, which is the sides, around the sides of the screen for new threats. Okay? And how these games can improve your ability to pay attention. So basically, let's see, the first task that we'll be looking at is distributing attentional resources throughout the visual field. So here you notice that you're obviously shooting the gun, but you need to see these people around here. What is this thing up here? What's over here? Being able to pay attention throughout your visual field. Now, this study by Hubert-Wallander, Green, and Bavelier basically talked about this useful field of view task. Basically being able to identify what is useful in your field of view. And so basically they had participants locate small targets among distractions on a screen, and they found that habitual action video game play significantly improved the performance on these useful field of view tasks without costing them their central vision. So this suggests that they're better at multitasking. An interesting point here would be that girls performed worse than males before training, but they closed that gap, which means that they equaled the boys within about 10 hours of training. So this shows us that girls can be at risk for underperforming on spatial attention tasks or tests if they're not controlled by gender for video game play. So girls may benefit the most from these types of trainings. Because this learning outcome is discuss, obviously we want to talk about interesting points, but also howevers, right? Boot et al., so another researcher who did some research, they got the same results, but they were not significant. And when your results aren't significant, you know that they're not really that important unless they're kind of disproving something, okay? And so they're saying that the results were not replicable, okay, not reliable. However, there's a however to the however, Boot's experiment was not really carefully controlled, and they didn't really distinguish the amount of action game playing, and they talked kind of about a lot of game playing, but anywhere over 7 hours, and they said any video game. So in Boot's study, they didn't distinguish between Halo, Call of Duty, and then something like Super Mario Brothers, okay? So Boot's study doesn't hold a lot of weight, but it is a study that kind of goes against it. Now, one other counter-argument that could explain the results of the study, but without kind of attributing them to better attention, would be that maybe the results, maybe they were better at, where does it say? Maybe they were better at improved performance on this useful field of view and at dividing their attentional resources. Maybe they were better simply because they have more effective motor execution. Maybe their hands are just faster at pressing buttons or post-decisional processes. Maybe they have a really good reaction time. So maybe it's not how they're distributing their attention on the screen, but maybe after that, maybe they pay attention the same, but their hands are faster or their reaction times are faster. But they do say that this is unlikely because they tried to control for it. However, more research is definitely necessary. Okay, so the second effect of video games on paying attention, video games like Halo and Call of Duty, would be quickly and accurately counting how many objects are present in a visual scene. So basically, if you look at a picture like this, quickly and accurately counting how many enemies there might be and how many people on your own team there might be, right? So quickly knowing that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe people on your team are 5 enemies or something like that. And so basically, the tests that they did psychologically were having people pay attention to a scene with increasing numbers of objects. Gamers' ability to do this was better, and it also suggests enhanced visual short-term memory, because if you think about it, the numbers that they're keeping track of are being thrown really quickly into their short-term memory, and so it's almost like they're training their short-term memory to be a little better as well. Now, just like up above, we see, again, Boot et al. Had similar results, but they weren't significant, okay? The third effect of people who play video games would be multiple object tracking, the ability to attend to several objects continuously, so paying attention to where things go. So where's this guy going to go? Where's this guy going to go? Where's this guy going to go? What's coming at you and things like that. So most people, like it says, can successfully track and keep track of 3 to 4 objects on display, but gamers are better at splitting their attention among the moving objects. This is true for both adults and children. And the results, like we mentioned before, they might be partly because of this improved visual working memory and how it improves gamers' ability to cycle through and update memories, right? There's a little typo there. But basically, it's allowing them to make better memories. And that's that for the third benefit. Okay, the last benefit for this learning outcome, discuss how social or cultural factors affect one cognitive process. The last benefit of video games on attention, on paying attention, would be with the attentional blink test. And so basically what the attentional blink is it's a short period of a few hundred milliseconds after the presentation and apprehension of a primary target. Detection performance for a single target is significantly reduced. Basically, you hit your target, you get the thing you need, and what they're saying is for a few hundred milliseconds after that, you're blind to seeing more targets. You're blind to seeing it again. It's like your brain is almost giving you a pat on the back because you saw the first one, that you're more likely to miss the second one. That is called an attentional blink. Now, what they're saying is that gamers, adults and children, have a shorter attentional blink. So they have a shorter moment of blindness to seeing the second target once they've seen the first. Okay? So really the only other things that you want to mention after this is that gamers, actually, why don't we go back and summarize? Number 1 was distributing attention across the scenery. Number 2 was counting objects. Number 3 was tracking objects. And number 4 was attentional blink, a shorter attentional blink. So now going back to just a few other things, gamers seem to have more attentional resources to distribute. So what, for other people it might look like they're just being distracted because they're paying attention to, from one thing going to another. But actually with extreme gamers, they're paying attention to both. This study also shows the importance of training studies because you need to have people with no game experience, because if you think about it, people with prior experience, they could have, 2 hours a day of experience or 5 hours a day of experience. That's obviously not going to help the validity of your study. So it's really important to have people starting without any experience and then training one group to play video games and then seeing how much better they get. Not just taking people who say they've been playing and comparing them to people who say they haven't been playing. Another thing to consider is that training is difficult. Different people respond differently to different types of training. And just a couple of other implications. Gamers can optimize the distribution of top-down and voluntary kind of paying attention voluntarily, top-down resources across time and space better than non-gamers. More tests, more electrophysiological and fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging tests, will give more information about how they process these stimuli. And lastly, we can talk about the real-world application. Why does this matter? Who cares? Well, it matters for everything from everyday driving, if you think about people crossing the street while you're driving, animals coming into your view, to jet fighter pilots, ground soldiers, military, laparoscopic, which is microscopic surgery, right? Like tiny, tiny, tiny little microscopic surgeries. They're already testing video gaming out and finding that doctors who practice with video games have fewer errors and they actually do the surgeries faster. And this could also be applied maybe for training individuals and homes of older populations to kind of stay focused and have good attention. And so that's that. So remember, with discussion points, you want to remember the howevers and the counter arguments and the different factors involved.